You are listening to the In the Travel Know podcast, where we talk to game-changing leaders in the industry on how they got to where they are, trends they think will transform the industry, what they believe is the future of travel, and how they support sustainability, diversity, and young people in travel. Are you ready to get in the travel know? Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the In the Travel Know podcast, powered by Avis Budget Group and supported by Waterfront, the creative agency for ambitious travel companies, and the ITT Future You. My name is Jamie Lee Abtar, your host, and today I am joined by Stig Williams, who is the head of international travel and partnerships for Avis Budget Group. Stig, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Jamie Lee.
And how are you feeling this morning?
I'm feeling great. You know, we went to the Globe Travel Awards last night. I had the honor as well to give out the outstanding awards. Feel a bit tired today, but what a great event last night.
It was a fantastic event. It was fantastic to just have the industry back together, feel all the positivity, see people you haven't seen in, 2+ years. And it was just fantastic to be around everyone. So thank you for the invite as well.
No, my pleasure. And you know, it was 1,200 people there last night. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, so the industry is back.
We're back.
For sure.
Travel is back. So today, the In the Travel Know podcast, you guys are one of our supporters of the podcast, and we thank you very much for that. And the podcast is all really about highlighting those influential leaders within the travel and tourism industry. And for me, what's really important, I think for other people as well, is understanding that journey. How did you get to where you are today, Stig? So can you give us a little bit of a background about how you got into travel, you know, kind of that first job that you had? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because when you were saying that you were going to ask that question, it makes you just start to think, actually, why am I who I am today? And what did I do when I was young, which actually created the person I am? And, you know, going back, I'm Norwegian and was living in a very small village in Norway. I was helping out with my dad in his supermarket when I was growing up. But quite early on in my years, I was a very passionate person and I was a member of a youth organization, which was working very much so for human rights and anti-drugs. And, you know, through that youth organization, that's where I started to learn sort of my leadership qualities. And I, at the age of 15, I was doing visits to schools around all of Norway, doing presentations. I was visiting local authorities. I was doing education for youth, so youth could go back and educate youth in school. And that was giving me sort of a platform of sort of what I wanted to do in life. But at the same time, I mentioned I was very passionate. And through that period as well, I started later on to figure out who I was as a person and my sexuality as well. And coming out as a gay in a small village and sort of getting sort of the acceptance of that was very difficult and hard. And, you know, it does make something with you to give you a little bit more determination and sort of fight against what you feel is not right. And then, you know, of an age of 19, I went to a leadership training through this youth organization because I didn't do very well at school. I had dyslexia and English, for example. I was horrendous. I was actually put out together with another Down syndrome girl and had sort of my education with her because I didn't perform. But I got my parents to send me to a language travel school in England for 4 weeks, and that gave me sort of the confidence to start to speak English. But yes, I went to leadership training for a year. I started to work for this youth organization as an activity secretary. But through my job there as well, I started to also represent this youth organization, traveling over to Russia, to Sri Lanka, to different projects around the globe. And I started to really want to start in travel. And what I then saw, it was an opportunity to attend something we call Ving School. Ving is one of the brands belonging to Thomas Cook in Europe. And went there for being a holiday rep. And I went down to Mallorca for a 2-month training and thought, no, I really want to do this. I went home to Norway, sold my apartment and everything I owned. And then I went out as a holiday rep in Mallorca for 6 months. And, it was definitely something I truly enjoyed. Doing excursions, doing transfers, selling tickets at the hotels and doing a great customer service. I was very passionate about it. It was also a great time to enjoy Spanish culture. Started also to learn Spanish through speaking to people. And then I also worked in hotel reception for Ving over another 6 months before I moved to Cuba.
Cuba
and then
as well. Wow.
So I lived in Cuba 6 months, moved over to Mexico. I then was promoted to become service manager for Thomas Cook Northern Europe. I was also based here in London. I was looking after 3 service offices we had here in London. We had charter flights coming in from Scandinavia, from both Norway, Sweden, Denmark and Finland. I was overseeing all the brands in those markets coming in. And then I moved down to be a area manager in Lanzarote. I had a very small team and it wasn't a huge amount of tourists coming down to Lanzarote, but I did that for 2 years. But obviously I did something right because I think they saw maybe the potential. So I was then actually asked if I wanted to become area manager for the biggest destination of Thomas Cook Northern Europe, which was Gran Canaria, moving from having a couple of staff to overseeing 100 staff in Gran Canaria with about 300,000 customers arriving per year. It was a huge challenge. I was really up for that challenge, and I moved over to Gran Canaria and truly enjoyed that job. And also having a relationship with all the hotels and suppliers to encouraging sort of the staff for sales targets and service numbers was absolutely something I truly enjoyed. And I was really thinking that I was going to stay there for some time because I also bought myself an apartment in Gran Canaria and settled. But then it was just this one trip, a holiday over to Bangkok when I met Phil, my now husband. He was there, he was living in London, he was also happened to be in Bangkok. And he started to commute back and forth, Gran Canaria, London. And in the end, you have to take those kind of difficult decisions. So I decided to actually resign from my job at Thomas Cook and move over in with Phil in London. And this is then coming back to sort of that networking. And connections, because Thomas Cook Northern Europe had a very good relationship with also Avis over in the international region, which were based over here. And, they actually gave the idea to Julia Kemp that I had moved over, and Julia contacted me to see if I would be interested to start for Avis Budget Group and starting as a national account manager back in time, looking after UK and Scandinavia. And that sort of, I never planned it. I never thought
about it,
that I was going to even have a leadership position back in time. That wasn't in my vision. I didn't think I had those qualities. You
clearly know you do. That's an amazing story, and it's great to see how your journey really started. And then something you just said that was so powerful, like networking bit of things, like how important networking is. And that's another theme that keeps coming up throughout these podcast episodes, like the importance of your network, building your network, and making sure that that's a really key element of your success in whatever job you choose to do. Walk us through what a day, a typical day in the life of Stig looks like. What does a day in the life?
What is the daily life in my job? So maybe I can explain it, because when you said head of international travel and partnership, what is actually that?
What is that? What is that?
Because I'm sort of overseeing, me and my team, we are working on 3 verticals. Is the one which is leisure sales, and that's travel agents and tour operators. And then you have the travel management companies, and then partnerships with credit cards, hotels, airlines, etc. So me and my team, we're looking after not only Source UK, we are actually looking after Source Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and driving business in globally to our network. My day is normally starting quite early in the morning when I have calls with either customers or teams in the Pacific or Asia, and then you are sort of getting through over to Europe and then going over to the US with colleagues over there. But if you're asking me, obviously today we're coming out of the pandemic now, so obviously things are slowly changing and going more back to some kind of normality, where we obviously my job and my team's job is, of course, to maximize the revenue opportunities with our partners or TMC or leisure agents. But that's doing marketing activities, sales activities,
Everything.
but it's also constantly looking for pipeline opportunities and new business opportunities as well. And then as part of that is to attend quite a lot of conferences, events, networking. Networking means that you're also building opportunities or connections. And absolutely. Lots of travel. I'm looking actually forward to travel more now.
Okay, are you looking forward to it a bit more now?
Yeah, I'm a little fed up sitting in my home office day and night. Soon, you're having sort of Arabian travel market coming up again, and I can't wait to go down to Middle East
to
again.
Start getting back out there and getting back. Yeah, we definitely need it. We've been missing it for too long.
Exactly.
So, what would you've had an amazing career so far. Like so many different amazing things have happened throughout that career. What has been one of those kind of highlights that you would consider, and why a career highlight?
It's so many highlights. Every day is highlights, isn't it? Because you're achieving something and something you maybe felt that you were not able to do. But I think reflecting and going back in time, you have to be that when I stepped up and was becoming area manager for Thomas Cook Northern Europe in Gran Canaria. Suddenly overseeing sort of over 100 staff, and not only that, but with my dyslexia as well, I was overcoming sort of the fear of speaking other languages. And as you can hear, obviously I can communicate quite well in English now, but also at that time also speaking Spanish and sort of that was a huge highlight for me, that I was able to do contract negotiations in Spanish and having a great team, and we had some absolutely great, fantastic results as well from the time I was in Gran Canaria, both regarding NPS scores, but also sales numbers. We did quite a lot of changes and how we structured up the service. We also introduced the call center, so customers were able to contact us 24/7, and that was something we hadn't done before. So there were certain elements we did during the time I stayed there, which really are successful, and I can see they're still doing it.
And they're still doing it now. Well, that's the proof right there, right? Exactly. They've kept it on, so that's amazing.
Now and then go down to Gran Canaria and check
it. And what would you kind of consider to be some of those, I guess, factors that help you to be successful, like things that you do, key things, what are some of those things you think?
Yeah, I think not to be afraid and maybe put yourself forward. And I was always doing that. And I would say, oh yeah, I can do that. And then afterwards you think, oh, I can't say that word, but oops. And then you're getting anxious, nervous, and then you're really starting to work yourself through it. And then you may be ending up doing this kind of presentation on a topic you maybe are not too comfortable about, or you are doing some tasks you are not feeling comfortable about. But that's constantly pushing you, and you are learning so much from doing that. And then it's so important then afterwards to reflect on that and sort of almost coach yourself that, yes, actually I can do this. It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. You know what? I always say that success is a bad teacher. Because you learn the most things when you are afraid, or you have failures, or I don't like to use failures, but things happen that don't necessarily go the way that you want it to go. That's when you learn the most. That's when you have the most growth. When you quote unquote successful and you've done it all, what are you learning at that point? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like I always say success is not the greatest teacher.
No.
Yeah, for sure.
Hi there, this is Sam Ballard, the Managing Director of Waterfront, the ambitious creative company for ambitious travel companies. And this episode's Waterfront Moment is all about behavioural science and a term called the pratfall effect. The pratfall effect is super, super interesting. It's basically when a company manages to communicate with its audience, basically shows vulnerability. It steps away from that corporate communications, and it manages to really cut through because of that. It's a really interesting term, and it's a really interesting concept, and it's one that was probably best used by Avis in the 1960s with its We Try Harder campaign. The We Try Harder campaign was Avis essentially admitting to the market that it was number two. It sat behind Hertz, and they used terms like Avis can't afford dirty ashtrays, or Avis is number two, so why go with us? Avis is number two in rent-a-cars, we try harder. The campaign was so successful that Avis ended up using this slogan and this campaign for decades. In fact, it was so successful that it went from losing money for the entire decade before, the year before I think it lost $3.2 million, to earning $1.2 million the year after it came out, which just goes to show how successful and how much cut through this made. In fact, they went to be number one. In the end, they eclipsed Hertz. There's a modern day example of the pratfall effect with Polestar, the electric car company, and its Super Bowl advert, which is well worth checking out. They have more than a cheeky nod to Tesla, the market leader, as well as its famous and outspoken CEO, Elon Musk. Do have a look at that. This is your Waterfront moment, brought to you by Waterfront, the creative agency for the travel industry.
What advice would you kind of give to individuals? So the podcast is obviously targeted to future talent coming into the industry and people who are already in the industry. What advice would you kind of offer to someone who might be looking to get to a place of like one day becoming the head of international travel and partnerships? What advice would you be able to offer to them?
Yeah, I think again, it's going back to what I just said, is putting yourself forward. But I think part of that is also then networking and putting yourself forward to different kind of events, if that's through ITT or BTA or other conferences. And I think, building up those networks, maybe that network is not maybe necessarily useful right now, but then later on it will absolutely be useful. And also the network you're having, they're also moving the time as well. So they also maybe getting different positions from actually where the starting point was. So, LinkedIn, I think, is a fantastic tool in that sense. But I think just be out there and do
just
great networking. And in the end of the day, is then you're showing who you are and your personality.
And your personality to people. And just as you said, it's like beating that fear, forgetting fear, just, what's the worst that could happen?
Exactly. And I think lots of people are maybe quite nervous about networking. And I think we all have been. It's quite hard when you're going into a room with maybe 50 or 100 people and think, where should I start? But for me, it's almost like a role play. I don't know if you've been in a theatre group, but it's and sometimes it's maybe come up with a couple of sort of questions and then you use that for every single person you move around. But then you're moving on from that, and then after some time you're starting to bond with people, you start to know them, and then next time it's also easier because you always have some faces you also know, and then you slowly are building.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You hear that, guys? Just get started. Just go to your first networking event. And I remember being moving from Barbados, huge insecurities, moving to this place called London, and having to go to networking events, not knowing anyone at all. And I know I totally get going for my first event, I probably stood in the corner just okay, I don't know anyone. But as you said, you get those first kind of initial questions and you start talking, but the next event, someone and you just keep building on it. So networking is really, really integral. And I want to, as we kind of wrap up this whole thing around influence and success and how you got to where you got to, how do you define success? And how do you, what's your kind of definition for success?
What is the definition actually of success? Because, it's so much which can be success. Is success sort of financially, or is success actually that you're achieving something you didn't think you were able to achieve?
I think it looks different for everyone.
I think it's different, but also for me, every day, I think it's more that you should actually find successes every day, because you are doing something every day which is successful. And you should take the learnings from that and sort of, it's important because then you're thinking positive.
Yeah, I like that. I think I might have something I'm going to try to adopt, looking at it every day. What's the successes I had today? I like that a lot. So part of the podcast is to talk about insights, things that are happening, trends. And obviously we had the last 2 years, we're not going to say the word, but we had the last 2 years and lots have happened, lots have changed. What are those kind of key changes that you've seen happen throughout your business in the last 2 years that you can talk about for us?
It's been quite a lot of changes. I think the first point I would make is sort of communication. I think it's sort of using video conferencing. Also how much we hate it. I think for me, working in sort of an international sort of environment where you have team members but also customers based all over the globe, you sort of are suddenly getting a totally different interaction with them. Where you traditionally maybe had conference calls, now you have video calls, you can see their expressions, you can share content, you can share presentations. It's much more easier. Of course, it can never replace sort of that face-to-face, and of course that's also coming back. But at the same time, I think we all agree that sort of video conferencing is here to stay as well, and it's a great way of communicating. But as a company, quite quickly in the pandemic, we realized also, contactless experience is so much more important. And, we did offer that through Avis Preferred, but we also then introduced digital check-in where customers could upload sort of the driving license, and we are checking out your selfie, and then we can prepare all the paperwork so you can go straight to your car in many of the destinations, which have also increased our NPS score. But it's also to give consumers sort of that flexibility as well to cancel free of charge, to also telling them about sort of how we're ensuring that we are keeping the health and safety in
and
mind,
safety.
and how we're cleaning the vehicles, and we
Yeah.
introduce sort of Avis safety pledge. So it's many different
Lots of
elements.
layers
Which,
of it that's changed in the business.
yeah.
Okay, and what trends is Stig watching? What things are you interested in, Stig? Like marketing, technological, what's on your mind?
It's a pandemic as well. I think sort of things have changed, and I think it's definitely people obviously want to travel again. They haven't maybe seen their family and friends, or they haven't sort of been on holidays, been together with family and done something out of quality. But I do believe sort of the trends we are seeing is that people definitely are traveling for longer. If that's for business or leisure, we can absolutely see that that's
It's definitely
a trend,
longer.
and that's going to continue. I think that you maybe will do more if you're going on business. You will actually do more meetings, when you first start flying out to destination, and then the question is sort of how big is pleasure going to be as part of that, in the sense that if you're going in business, you may be staying on to explore that destination or take an Avis car, maybe going out and support some of the local communities around. But from sort of a leisure point of view, is that I think we're also going to stay longer, because with that flexibility of working from home, and I know lots of companies are opening up for staff to also work from home a couple of days a week, for example, and going to continue doing so. Is, for example, Natasha in my team, she now on holiday in South Africa for 2 weeks, but she's actually going to have the third week in South Africa, and then she's going to work from South Africa. And I think that's also going to change, and that's also going to change the way we maybe are promoting our products, and I'm sure lots of our colleagues out there will look at this as opportunities as well. And then it's maybe more important that you actually, the hotel or the apartment you're selecting, maybe have a separate desk so you can still work. And,
so that's going to change. I haven't even thought about that, but that's definitely going to change the way how, the accommodation works for sure. Yeah, that's amazing. And what skills do you think that young people coming into the industry should consider looking at now? Because obviously things are changing.
Yeah.
What kind of key skills do you think they should be looking at?
It's in one way, you can answer this question in many different ways, because it's depending on what sort of departments within travel industry you are going towards. But I believe, because I'm a believer that you can actually learn quite a lot of. You can learn to do different tasks through sort of doing it
while doing on the job.
So for me, it's more about sort of your communication skills and your networking skills. I think if you have that, you will be able to manage it. And if you are then also a quick learner, you can actually then go into lots of different departments. But I think it's coming down to
the more personal traits versus the most personal skill set versus the academic or looking at that. Yeah,
and is that you think that if you're working in finance, you maybe absolutely need to have an accounting degree or something. Yeah, exactly. But I've always been good with numbers, and when I was young, I was working for this. I was volunteering for this youth organization. I was helping with accounting, but that also helped me having an extra job in addition to my full job being an accountant, and did sort of salary payouts and sort of the tax returns and etc. And you can learn. You can learn on the job. 100%. That like grassroots learning is really, I think it's really good. It's really fantastic. What is Avis doing as it relates to sustainability? Of course. You start with sustainability, we could go into diversity, because obviously, the car rental, it has had an impact on the environment. What are some of the things that you guys are doing now to help with the whole sustainability issue? Yeah, sustainability have been high up on the agenda for many, many years. And I think when you talk about car rental, you automatically think sort of electrical vehicles only. I think sort of sustainability is so much more. It's all about also what we are doing in operation. How are we recycling the oil, which we are changing? What are we doing with the which are being changed? So we're also recycling this, and so we are constantly looking at how we can sort of be more sustainable regarding our operation and how we are running our headquarter. Going over to sort of our fleets, is that we are changing our fleets on average every 6 months. So we will constantly follow sort of the demand. So in one way, we could in principle have 100% electrical vehicles tomorrow. But if we did that, obviously we had to have the infrastructure, but we also have to have the demand for it.
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge, because today the consumers are not confident of renting an electrical vehicle. Maybe because they don't own an electrical vehicle themselves. And if you have an electrical vehicle and flying out to a different country, you maybe are not sure about the infrastructure and how things is working. So obviously for us, it's important that the educational piece and also for customers renting electrical vehicles is to also give them sort of the tools on finding out sort of where they can recharge on the way. And as I said, I'm from Norway. Like all of my family in Norway have an electrical vehicle. My husband's family here in the UK, no one have an electrical vehicle. So for us, and that's reflecting a little bit, because for Avis Budget Group in Norway and in Sweden, 25% of our fleet are hybrid or electrical. What we also...
It's a cultural thing then.
Yeah, but I think it's step by step. Some countries are a little bit more behind regarding the infrastructure. And it is a big project, because we also have to work with so many other organizations. For example, other airport locations are at the airport. It's the airport authorities which are on the lands and say that we want to put up 1,000 charging stations at plot of land. And if the grid into that location is not there, obviously, so we have the whole electricity of the airport is flowing. So obviously it's a big it's a process. But what we see is the different kind of segment of customers we're having is that electrical vehicles will be easier to sell into customers who are leasing and doing long term, because they normally use that vehicle from the home to the office. They know
custom with
around.
I
think what is maybe coming further down the line, the masses of short-term rentals is going to be a little bit further down the line when you're flying into a totally different country and renting the vehicles for a couple of days.
Or whatever the case is.
But again, what I said is that we are following constantly the demands.
And
then we are just adjusting that as we go.
As you go ahead. And you are somewhat of a diversity and inclusivity champion in the industry. I give you that title. I give it to him, guys. So tell us a little. Actually, before we tell us what Avis is doing, tell us what you think the industry could be doing slightly better as it relates to diversity and inclusivity, actually.
It's a lot. It's a very good question as well, because there's so much we can do. I think we always can do. Also, if you feel you're doing quite a lot, there's always more you can do. I believe that sort of apprenticeship, I believe really much so in, because that will means that you're giving opportunities for a very diverse group of people who maybe not necessarily maybe can afford to go to university, and therefore you give them also an opportunity to get into the industry in that way. But I think it's more sort of awareness and also sometimes also training, but we just need to continue adding it on the agenda, because it's so many elements of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and it's very complex. Lots of times it's also lots of people also find it hard to have good conversations.
Those conversations,
I feel that within Avis Budget Group, we are breaking those barriers and we're having some great conversations. And just last week, I was attending our global leadership conference, which was actually virtual.
That was virtual this year.
I know. We were 500 leaders within the organization, and first of all, 38% was women on the call, and obviously that's obviously something we're also focusing on is sort of how diverse is our leadership team. But we had on the agenda also diversity, equity, and equality on the call, and we did a lot of breakout sessions. I was very pleased to facilitate some of those breakout sessions, and what we did at that stage was also to come up with additional action plans. So what we want to do as an organization and what would be then the next steps to achieve those.
That's fantastic. Are there any particular programs that you're running right now in the UK market around like diversity and inclusivity that you want to talk about, or?
So well, we have the power of difference. So I will say that that's sort of a very good forum, which we are following through at Avis Budget Group, and is to celebrate difference. And we're having different theme days, and we're having different also groups where we are discussing different topics, and
it's about
a great-
learning. You're in that learning phase, because that's so important, you know, educating and learning and getting people aware of, like, you know, the power of diversity, really.
Yeah, but also then looking at the data you're having as well to really understand how diverse are we, or how
that's a start. That's a starting point.
Because that's also very important.
Yeah, it's very.
And then you have to create actions. You can't change things overnight.
Overnight, you won't. No. Yeah, we can. And as we begin to wrap up, my 2 favorite questions to ask on the podcast is the first one: if you weren't the head of international travel and partnerships, what career would you like to explore?
Well, I always been quite sort of I would still be in the travel industry.
Okay,
though. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. But I think cruise liners.
Oh, cruise
yes,
liners. I don't know. That's interesting.
No,
one
because I love going on cruises.
Okay.
I love waking up in destinations every day and sort of explore different destinations. So I love the idea. I love the product of cruise liners.
Because
and that would be a very different, not very different, but a different industry.
A different challenge, a different industry. Yeah. Okay, interesting. Cruise lines. And whose career inspires you and why?
It's a very difficult question, because in one way I don't necessarily have a fixed person or I want to be like him
This
or
person.
her. Absolutely not. I've never been like that. But when I saw that you were going to ask that question, I was starting to think about sort of who inspires me, and one organization which is actually inspiring me is Chicken Sheds.
Chicken Sheds.
Me and my husband, we adopted 3 children, and 2 of our 3 boys were taking part of Chicken Shed, which is a theatre group. Actually, Princess Diane was the patron of Chicken Shed back in time, but it's all about diversity and inclusion. And it's bringing everyone together, and the values they're having, and the staff working there able to bring people together with all kind of backgrounds, and it's just so beautiful to see. And that's really inspired me.
I love that. I'm gonna check them out.
Yeah.
I've heard Chicken Shed. I won't forget that. I would say Chicken Shed. But yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Indie Travel No Show, and wishing you much success in everything for the rest of the year. Thank you so much, Stig.
Thank you so much, Emilia, and likewise. Thank you so much. All the best.
The In the Travel No podcast is powered by Avis Budget Group, a global mobility provider operating in over 160 countries, creating a diverse and inclusive culture. Their brands include Avis, Budget, and Zipcar. They work to connect you to more. They are a team of visionaries, inventors, and achievers, driving technology that will revolutionize the world. They have roles in airports, operations, corporate, and support teams. To find out more, visit avisbudgetgroup.jobs to browse their latest global vacancies.